Do you know that you can help to reduce the spread of influenza A H1N1 in Jamaica by taking the following precautionary measures? If you are sick, limit your contact with other people as much as possible. Do not go to work. Stay at home until you are fully recovered. Cover your mouth and nose with a mask or tissue when coughing or sneezing. Throw the used tissue in the wastebasket. Then, wash your hands with soap and water, and do so every time you cough or sneeze. Remember, prevention is always better than cure, so protect yourself and your family from the influenza A H1N1 virus. A message from the Jamaica Information Service, the Voice of Jamaica.
Thanks for staying with us. We now join host Ian Boyne and his guest on today's edition of Issues and Answers, journalist and public relations consultant Ken Jones.
Ken, it's so good to have you on Issues and Answers.
Yes, I think I finally made it. The upper echelons of broadcasting.
Oh, boy. You're so kind. Another book on Bustamante.
Yes.
You have taken a great deal of interest in Bustamante. You knew him personally. You spent a number of years just looking over the records, doing enormous research on Bustamante. What are some of the primary things you come away with after having spent this much time on Sir Alexander Bustamante?
Well, I had to conclude from personal observation and later research and study that this man was a most unusual personality, a human being that is you can hardly replicate. And when I considered all his achievements and his courage, his humor, his humanity, and his humility, that he was somebody that ought to be remembered, that we ought to take lessons from all that he had done and make better use of the legacy he left behind. I think it is now something like 30 years since the man passed. And there is a whole generation here that couldn't write you 200 words about him because in Jamaica here, we don't teach too much about our national heroes. We tell them where they were born, when they were born, and things like that. But to really understand their philosophy and their contribution to the development of the country, that is not done enough. And I think it contributes to the weakness of our people. Because I do believe that our people are not as strong as they should be, not as independent as the leaders of the past thought that they were going to make of our people.
So you wrote this book to fill this knowledge gap.
Yes, that was not the first thought. The first thought was the admiration of the man and his work. And then as I went on, I realized that, if people knew more about him, and there was great misconception about the kind of man he is. A lot of people thought he was not very well educated and all that. Well, maybe he wasn't greatly educated, but he was very wise. And there is a great gap between wisdom and education. You can be educated and not be wise. Well, he was a wise man, an unusual man. And it was my hope that from what he had done, our people could draw inspiration and improve themselves and the country.
What are some of the main things we can draw in contemporary Jamaica from the life of Sir Alexander Bustamante?
Well, we know him mostly as a political leader because that is how he came out in his late life after he had passed 50 going into 60.
54 years. And
the sacrifices he made have been underestimated. When you consider the times that he came out in the 30s there.
Yes.
He needn't have done what he did. He had enough money to be comfortable. He had his color. He had his family connections and his experience and skills. He didn't have to do what he had done, but he turned his back on his personal life and devoted his whole attention to the development of poor people and the country at large. And he started by writing all these letters. Then he came out in person, leaving behind everything to do with his own personal well-being.
So this example of self-sacrifice.
That kind
certainly
of
a relevant message in Jamaica in 2009.
When you think of it, all these people he were marching up and down with, every day he would go out there, up and down the country. He wasn't doing it because he was expecting a salary. There was no salary attached.
Was he power-crazed, Ken Jones? Was it power that he was looking?
Well, he realized that he had power after the people had given it to him.
But that wasn't his motivation.
But I don't think that's where he started.
Yes.
Because he started with the letter writing, pointing out all these
Social
difficulties
ills.
and things that needed to be corrected. And like I say, he made all these sacrifices without any thought of compensation or reward. And then he was campaigning up and down the country, speaking without microphones, speaking in dusty places anywhere. He wasn't campaigning for a seat in Parliament. He had no thought of that because the people at that time had no vote. So it was like he was running for election. That
power.
developed afterwards.
You
know, so those sacrifices.
That was an important lesson. Anything else? So the self-sacrifice.
Today we see some of what is going on. No, there was no sacrifice there. Every man for himself.
Yes.
And it's not a good thing for the country. And we need to stop and take stock of that.
Yes.
So,
is courage is something else that you point to in the book. I want to take the break, but that's certainly an important characteristic. We're looking at the life of national hero Sir Alexander Bustamante. This book, Notes, Quotes, Anecdotes, Bustamante by Ken Jones. Ken Jones is our guest on Issues and Answers today. We take a break, but we'll be right back.
Stand up and get in the race.
I can become the master of my destiny.
Step up your stride, make we work like a harder. Do it like Veronica, more than a suffer.
We can rise above the challenges and shine.
Was with passion in your heart. Make a plan and stop all the hyping. You think I saw? We reach a the edging. I can, you can. Like our Olympians, every Jamaican can.
Welcome back. The book Bustamante, Notes, Quotes, and Anecdotes by Ken Jones is what we're discussing. We're looking at the life of national hero Sir Alexander Bustamante with Ken Jones, the author of the latest book on Bustamante. Courage, such an important quality. Not enough of it displayed in Jamaica. Bustamante certainly had large amounts of that.
Oh, yes. Unmatched, I would say. Not since his time have I seen that kind of courage. And, you know, we have read about him bearing his chest in the face of bayonets. Yes. That was only one example of the courage he displayed. I mean, he had a way of doing things that people never stop to think about. I think it's courageous, for instance, if you have an election going on and the opposing party is having one of their big meetings indoors discussing strategy against you, and you suddenly appear in the middle of the meeting.
He has done that.
He did that, I think, in 1944. when I think it was the JDP were having their meeting at World Theatre. Yeah. And they were having this meeting discussing their strategy and also on who should appear in the middle of the meeting.
Yes.
He just strode down, stood in front of the platform, put his hands in his pocket, gazed at them, and walked out. The meeting broke up because there was nothing else to talk about that day. Everybody talking about how this man walked into place. And
it was said also, Ken, that he had a remarkable generosity of spirit, an ability to forgive, just to forget hurts.
Yes.
Any instances of that? Any?
Yes. Well, take his sidekick, St. William Grant.
Yes.
He and St. William fell out about twice, where he had to fire him. But he always forgave him. And when he died, St. William went to his funeral and cried and confessed how good the man had been to him. Okay. Although he had campaigned so heavily against him.
Yes.
Ken Hill, who is supposed to have driven him out of Kingston, in West Kingston, made it so hot for him he had to go to Clarendon.
Yes.
And Ken was one of his severest critics.